as usual, hello. It's going to be a video on, well, as the title says, presidents that were worse than Trump, because all you hear about from the left and the Democrats is how Trump is supposedly the worst president ever, even though, granted, he's actually nowhere close, and he's done a number of things Obama should have done that didn't even do. Has gotten us out of a number of foreign involvement that we were in, has actually brought some jobs back to the United States, and so on and so forth. Still, somehow we hear about how he's the worst president ever. And I wanted to make this series of videos not only to prove that's not correct, but to say that even if that was correct, in or he was at least a very, very bad president, let's just say that was true. I wanted to show how he is by far not the only one. And how really every president since Kennedy has been a very corrupt political figure, and how they have gotten us into war after war after war, wreaked havoc on our economy and the world's economy, and fucked with us economically and our economics. How they have broken constitutional law, how they have violated our rights as American citizens. And I wanted to really go into detail about how, in spite of what America might, or the news media, and or your education system might tell you and have been telling you since you were a kid, the presidency isn't the most noble office in the land. And in actuality, all these former presidents are really this aging, senile political cracks who have put you in wars and fucked you more ways than a fucking porn star. I mean, like, they have literally fucked you every way, shape, and form possible until Sunday. They have fucked you. So I want to start with Ronald Reagan. And this isn't to particularly attack Ronald Reagan, as I just said, but I'm going to simply start with him, because I'm not trying to say that he's a minute. I wanted to start with Ronald Reagan simply because, first of all, I didn't want to go through Nixon. I think we all know about Nixon. We know about Watergate, not ending the Vietnam War. I think at some point, for some reason, he wanted to throw John Lennon out of the country. I guess he couldn't imagine. I don't know why. Anyways, yeah, that's Nixon, not a good president. But if I started with Nixon, I'd have to go back further, and I'm just, I don't want to talk about Carter, because while Carter wasn't a perfect president, he was better than most, and he only got one term in office. And speaking of that, by the way, then that is my point. But I'm going to talk about a few presidents as opposed to every single fucking president we ever had since George Washington, because I would like to make a few of these fucking videos and get it over with, as opposed to having to talk about a few hundred presidents, or make a few hundred videos. I would rather make a few. So I'm starting with Reagan, and I just want to give you an example of how every president in United States history has been corrupt since Kennedy. Every president since Kennedy has been corrupt, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, and he didn't last but one term in office, and you kicked him out. And to this day, people diss him, because I guess you weren't ready for that. A president that's not corrupt and isn't fucking you over, you're just not ready for that. But Ronald Reagan, obviously, we'll start with the Contra affair, the Iran-Contra affair, where we pretty much funded during an arms embargo that I believe he helped put in place. I could be wrong. That might. 1 minute. During an arms embargo that I believe he helped put in place. I could be wrong. That might go back to Nixon. But during the arms embargo against Iran, he helped fund or ship weapons to Iran as part of a plea deal or a negotiation to help free several U.S. hostages. And of course, they did this secretly without any American prior knowledge of it by the American public, without telling them, and outright lying to us at first. Furthermore, they also attempted to use funds or money from this deal that was to be made with Iranians. I'm guessing they were to make money off this. Again, my knowledge of this, or really, I never knew a lot about this, and my memory is a little foggy, but he wanted to use the funding or money made from this to give to Contras over in, I believe it was Nicaragua. Um, so he wanted to give right-wing political dissidents money to help overthrow the current socialist government of Nicaragua. And basically the entire thing violated international law and was illegal. So that was something he did. And he funded and gave weapons to Iran. That is, we still say now, there was also saying then is a terrorist state under the Ayatollah. Probably more crazy right wing back then than they are now. They are a religious theocracy. Obviously, they kill gays. We know all this. And that was something he did. And that by the way, was also America. And this wasn't something Reagan did, but back in the 60s, they had a Democratic president. They had a president that was not a radical religious leader, who, as I have talked about before, he would brag about how short the skirts were of women in Iran, and how the skirts of the women in Iran were shorter than some of the ones in Paris, France. So we ousted him for various reasons, or something like that, and we ended up putting these people ended up being in power. But he does that. This video is gonna suck for a multitude of reasons. I was ill prepared. Probably should have went through this in my mind before I made the fucking video. And then of course the pop-ups and everything else. And also I'm very awkward when I'm out drinking, and I haven't drunk much yet today, so that's one reason. But they also attacked Grenada. So you know they liberated Grenada. So once we got done attacking them like a eagle attacking a pigeon, we went on to try to overthrow the government in Nicaragua. We also bombed Gaddafi, bombed a city in Libya, we bombed one city that had a disco in it that Gaddafi's daughter was in. So even back in the 80s, we were screwing with that guy. And we killed his daughter, and pretty much murdered his daughter, bombing that disco. We went on, later on, of course, you know about the CIA shipping drugs into the country. We went on because the CIA was involved in trafficking drugs into the country. And of course, if you want to know why, I'll tell you the reason why. Regardless of their excuses, the reason for this is, like I said, it's a privately run prison system. Because why else would we? Because Reagan was also a tough proponent for the war on drugs, and that started under Nixon, and they were putting people in prison for the war on drugs and really cranking up the war on drugs. And meanwhile, of course, our government is not only allowing, but in some ways helping various people bring drugs into the country. Why? Because of a private prison system. The rich were bringing drugs into the country themselves, and the CIA were the ones bringing the drugs into the country. And then, of course, once you're caught with the drugs, they put you into a prison system where they make double the profit, because it's a private prison system that they're profiting off of because they're building the prisons up, and they make money and make a profit doing that. And the taxpayer still carries the bill. And meanwhile, they're bringing the drugs into the country to sell you, so that when they catch you with the drugs, they can then put you in prison. And that was back in the 80s. Reagan said he knew nothing about that. Once again, lied. Later on, admitted he lied. When the AIDS virus first broke out, for a while there, he refused to fucking talk about the issue or bring any kind of attention to the issue that was now threatening a lot of gay people's lives, and a lot of not only gay people but other people's lives. It was thought, and the reason for this was it was thought to be something that could only be transmitted through gay sex, and of course now we know that's bullshit. But what made him change his mind was his friend, who was gay, that no one knew this, of course. What was his name? Rock Hudson or something like that. I'm not getting it wrong. I don't know, whatever. This movie star that was supposed to be this ultra macho guy had the disease, and people were like, "Wow, he's gay." Yeah, because there is no certain type that is gay or straight or anything else. People are different. There's different kinds of people with different personality traits that are going to do different things. It's not as simple as, you know, this guy's gay, that guy's not gay, and you can tell this, that guy does that. That's not how that works. But the point is, regardless of any of that, that's not even important here. He did not care until it was someone he knew, and it was a famous person. And, you know, he pretty much ignored gay rights because he wanted to appease these Christian religious zealots, these right-wing lunatics who hated gay people. And he did that. And he refused to talk about gay rights or fucking AIDS, the AIDS virus that was killing people. And he didn't want to bring any fucking attention to the issue. And by the way, for all the supposed idiots or statistics out there that shows, and I'll talk about this, why not? Well, I admit it. It's like I'm not like I didn't fuck this video up. It's not like I haven't fucked this video up anyways. If you're still watching, I'm sorry I got off to a slow start, but the point is, I'm trying to hurry here. I'm kind of tripping over my words, in fact. But circumcision was supposed to, in part, prevent various sexual diseases. Even back then, they believed that. Never did. That's more junk science. And in addition to that, they have said since then, it was supposed to, since the AIDS virus broke out in the 80s, primarily in the 80s, they said that it was supposed to prevent AIDS. And of course, that's why AIDS broke out and got so big here first before it went, it did anywhere else in Europe or anywhere. And even now, until this day, even though we were circumcising the majority of children and did more back then than we do now. And you have bullshit, false medical organizations and people, even that the government have worked with, selling this snake oil, selling this crack medicine to try to make a profit. And that's all it is. And often it leads to you paying tax dollars. They tried this in Africa, where they try to use that as some kind of a way of preventing AIDS in Africa, and it doesn't work. And then meanwhile, they're taxing you to do this, and they're fucking using your tax money to cut a bunch of people's to cut skin out people's dicks over in fucking Africa. The point is, even now, the majority of fucking AIDS cases are in the United States, as far as the Western world goes, not in Europe, and it's not in Japan, if you want to include them. It's not in either one of those places, and they don't do that. We do. We still get AIDS, and I'm sorry I got way off track. But the point is, he didn't want to talk about AIDS. He didn't give a fuck about people with the AIDS virus. And that's your great saint, your great Republican, conservative, the passionate conservative. No, he's not. Of course, George H.W. Bush, the bright president at the time, and I might just go into talking about him a little while now because I don't want to make a video about him by itself. I'm on the next video that I make about this. And I'll probably make another video first because these videos suck anyways. It looks like this video sucks. But the point is, George H.W. Bush also was president. I'm not saying he did this, it's a bit ridiculous, but he was president at the Kennedy assassination. And I'm not sure if he was in that role in the CIA yet, but later on he would become the head of the CIA before becoming the vice president of the United States and then president. And he was president on the day of the Kennedy assassination when Kennedy was killed. A bit odd, don't you think? And then, of course, he took us into Iraq, adding to the Republicans' already increasing, building war resume, more and more wars. Of course, the Gulf War was a disaster, and giving him some credit, at least he had enough sense to see it was a disaster, and we got the fuck out of there. But we never should have went in, and unlike now, they were drafting people back then to go fight this bullshit war we never should have been in, and we more or less lost that war. So there's that. During all of this, by the way, I'm not sure if we did this under Bush or if we were started under the first Bush or if we were doing this under Reagan. We were funding Al Qaeda and the Taliban to overthrow and or fight the communists in Afghanistan. A minute. And of course, we were funding them. And of course, we know what they went on to do later on, blowing up the Twin Towers, supposedly, and killing people and bombing the Pentagon. And that's kind of a Mandela effect. Now they're saying people died in the Pentagon attack. They said at first they were remaking the area, so no one was harmed in the Pentagon explosion. Now they're saying they were, so that's kind of a Mandela effect. Or it's possible maybe they just lied for some reason, but the point is they blew up all that shit, right? So that's what Ron Paul, and I think the CIA calls it this, but Ron Paul called it blowback back when he was running. And while, by the way, while Ron Paul was one of the first people to really get me into politics and made me care about a lot of this shit, and want to learn more, though I'm sure the way this video started, it makes me sound like I don't know anything. And like I said, I'm a bit fuzzy on some of this fucking information, but because I haven't really studied this in a while, because Ronald Reagan, this is shit back in the 80s. But the point is, it is what Ron Paul called blowback. And like I was going to say, I'm not a big fan of everything Ron Paul believes in. I don't support some of his politics. I'm a liberal. He's a libertarian kind of guy, whatever. But the point is, he calls it blowback, and that's what he meant. It has a boomerang effect. It's, you know, like you throw a boomerang, it comes back and it hits you in the head or something, and you kill your ass doing that, you know. Same damn thing with this. It was blowback. We funded Taliban, we funded Al Qaeda, and a little guy named Bin Laden. And then later on, that came back to bite us in the ass. And that's pretty much what happened with that. Of course, we killed Gaddafi. Hillary Clinton, by the way, I'll go ahead and say this much, even though I'm going to make a video about Bill Clinton next. Hillary Clinton also killed Gaddafi, obviously. We were involved in trying to overthrow Gaddafi. That's part of what led to the creation of ISIL, in my opinion. So even at that point, back then, we were still doing things that later on led to the creation of ISIL, or the Islamic State. They went on, of course, they killed Gaddafi. And that was replaced with a religious, radical religious government. Then now, thanks to all of that, thanks to our intervention in that region, the black slave trade has returned to North Africa and has returned to Libya. And that really all started under Reagan, with Reagan dropping bombs on Libya and killing Gaddafi's daughter. So we've been doing this for a number of years. But the point of this, and the point that I'm making is, and the first initial reason I made this was that Trump may not be a great president, but he is certainly by far not the worst president. And if you think that it is, and I'm not sure if I said this, then you're missing the point. Because you need to understand what's wrong with this country. Its problem is systemic, and I'm not going to say fundamental. It's not the foundations of the country that are the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, but it is systemic and it is systematic, and it has worked its way like weeds work their way into a garden. It has worked its way into the foundations of the country and has corrupted the constitutional foundations of the country and the real foundations that are liberal, and it's replaced that with things like radical religious beliefs, Christianity, capitalism, identity politics on the left. This is not what our country was founded on. It's not what we're supposed to be. But that's my take on that. And or more or less, you know, we are supposed to be a liberal republic. And I just wanted to make the point that if you're blaming it all on Ronald Reagan, I mean, Trump or Reagan or anyone else, you're missing the point. So P666.